Hi there. I had a little false start this morning. Welcome to my weekly live stream. I'm Christine Weber and love to support mature yoga teachers in their work. Today I want to tell you a story, and it's a story about my hairstylist. Can you tell? No. um, Actually, I haven't had my hair cut in like 3 months. And that tells you something about my hairstylist because it's still kind of okay. I'm still getting away with it. He's good. I want to tell you his story because I got to know him a little bit. I've been with him for about 5 years now, I think, and I got to know him a little bit and asked him some questions about his training. And I think it's very interesting in light of, or very relevant in light of yoga training. So I was going to this one hairstylist for a number of years, and she got to the point where she was like, "I'm firing you." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Because I only want to work with clients who come every 6 weeks." And I was like, "Well, that's just not my thing." And so she was like, "Sayonara." And then I found this other hair salon. Like somebody recommended this first person, somebody recommended the second person. I went to the second person, and they were okay. And I wasn't quite that happy with the work, so I went to the owner of the salon. She was better. Then I started to hear rumors from many different sides that there were a lot of sketchy things going on in that salon, which need not be mentioned, but things that I really just didn't want to spend time there anymore. So I got to the place where I was like, I gotta find a new hairstylist. Have you ever been in that position where you're like, I gotta find somebody new? But I live in Asheville, and Asheville is basically like you can't throw a hairstylist without hitting a real estate agent and knocking over a yoga teacher. I mean, there's so many people in those industries in this town because it's a tourist town. So full of artists and full of hairstylists. And I was like, how am I going to find the hairstylist? So, you do the thing, you like ask your friends, and people would tell me who they liked, and I'd look them up and I'd be like, okay. And I tried a few people. And I was like, oh, it's all right. But it was like $260 or something to get my hair done. And I was like, that's a little out of my price range. So then I decided, hey, I'm going to research the person I want to work with. And I went to the like top salons in Asheville. I started looking at them. And then I started looking through the bios of the people that were doing the styling, right? And when I got to Gregory, for those of you who are in Nashville, my hairstylist name is Gregory Sargent, and he's over at Willow's Dream. I got to Gregory's bio, and it said trained in London and New York, and I was like, that could be interesting. And also been cutting hair for 35 years or something at that point. And I was like, this is the guy. Maybe I should try this guy out, right? So I went and met Gregory. He's like kind of an unassuming. He's just like this unassuming guy who cuts hair. And so I started asking him some questions. He cut my hair. He did a really good job the first time. Well, every time. He's like, I've had consistently good service from him for more than 5 years. But at some point, I don't remember exactly when it was, I said to Gregory, like, tell me about your training. And he said, well, what you need to understand is that training in London is not the same as it is in the US. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, here in the US, you go to beauty school, and it's like maybe 6 months or a year, and then you get out and you get a job at a salon, you start cutting hair. He said, it's not like that in Europe or where he's from in London. What he did was he found a master. He knew he wanted to be a hairstylist, so he found a master stylist at a salon, and he started apprenticing with him. He was like sweeping the floor, shampooing hair, watching him cut. Eventually, the stylist let him do a little bit of the cutting, a little bit more, and over time, he started learning the techniques from this master stylist. And then he went to New York City, and he did a very similar kind of apprenticeship there. So all of this was like news to me. I didn't know anything about the styling industry. It was all news to me. But what was fascinating to me about that story was how similar that story is to the teaching of yoga and the way that it traditionally was done in India, which is that it was called the Gurukul system, guru meaning the teacher and kula meaning the family. So the family of the Gurukul. And you would go and live with the teacher. There's numerous stories. Like if you read about Milarepa, he was who was a famous Buddhist saint. He was in a Gurukul situation with his teacher. Like you go and you live with the teacher, Or Krishnamacharya did the same thing. If you know who Krishnamacharya was, he was the teacher of Iyengar and Deskachar and Pattabhi Jois. He did the same thing. He went to Tibet and he stayed with his guru in a cave for 7 years or something, right? So, and I'm not suggesting we go back to any of this, but I do think it's an interesting parallel. So, what the yoga teachers would do was they would study, they would be the student of a teacher for many, many years until it was time for them to step up and start teaching. Now, when I started learning yoga, which was in the 70s and 80s, that's what was still happening. There was no yoga alliance. There were no teacher training programs. People still ask me, where did you do your first teacher training? My first teacher training was living in an ashram. And I lived with a teacher. Now, of course, it was not a huge amount of time. It was less than 2 months. But during that time, we were chanting sutras every day. We were studying philosophy. We'd do asanas. We'd do meditation. We would cook together. You know, we'd hang out and chant and sing kirtan together. We'd meditate together. All that stuff. Like we spent the whole day together. And it was a very profound and transformative experience for my quite young self. You know, it was in the early 90s, mid 90s. It was a transformative experience, and I'm really glad I got that experience. Now, the reason that I'm bringing this up today is because the other day every day I'm on social media and I see what's going on in social media. I've been trying to pay attention to how the trends are changing. I'm always trying to pay attention to that. And one of the things I'm seeing lately, and I'll give you some specific examples, but one of the things I'm seeing lately is a trend towards not putting anything in your bio about how you studied or where you studied. Or sometimes there's just simply an RYT after someone's name, or maybe an ERYT sometimes, but no specific information. I see this more commonly, I see it in two ways. One is with the influencers. So I was watching somebody the other day. She was on the beach taking a shower, washing her hair, and talking about the great shampoo she's using. And by the way, you should do her meditation course, which will help you meditate if you've never meditated before. And also, if you've been meditating for 20 years, it will help you. That was interesting. Nothing in her bio about her yoga training. I thought that was really fascinating. And then I saw another guy, and he's really out there on social media teaching breathing trainings. He's like creating breathing coaches, all sorts of stuff with yoga. Nothing in the bio about who he trained with at all. Nothing. When I was first studying a lot of yoga in the 90s, the way you'd find a teacher is you would look, there weren't even websites. You know, you'd look in Yoga Journal sometimes, and you'd like look at the back and you'd see who the teacher was, and you had some understanding of what their lineage was, where they came from, who they were studying with. That's kind of going away. So there's that side of it. And then the other side I see are people who are physical therapists or physiotherapists in other countries, doctors sometimes as well, who don't feel the need to put any of their yoga training in. And the reason, and they're teaching stuff, and the reason they don't talk about their yoga training, it appears to me, is because they're already experts in the field of movement, whether you're an occupational therapist, physiotherapist. It's mostly the physios I see doing this. And by the way, not all of them. I'm not throwing physios under the bus. They have a lot of I love them. They have a lot of good things to offer. However, they're conflating yoga with movement, and they're saying, well, I've already got this movement, so I can train yoga teachers. I mean, I know one trainer who trains a lot of healthcare professionals, and she has nothing in her bio about her yoga training. And she actually had a lot of arguments with the International Association of Yoga Therapists because they wouldn't give her the credential, because there was no evidence of any yoga training. These are two trends I see. I see the influencer trend and I see the medical trend. And, I think whatever anybody's teaching can be useful in many ways. And for me, what's happening at this time, what we're being really forced to look at this time, is the sort of watering down of yoga and the kind of yoga training, and this sort of flat landing. Ken Wilber uses the term flat landing. It means you make the whole playing field level. That's a big problem. And it's a big problem because it means that, okay, physical therapy is great, learn about physical therapy, but it's not yoga. And influencers can do whatever they want, but that doesn't mean that they're experts in yoga. And so I think what really is essential right now, and I think the message we have to get out to our students in a kind way, not I'm not being judgmental here. The message is vivek. The message is discernment. And, just in the same way that I went about finding my hairstylist, well, I wanted somebody who was on it, had a ton of experience, knew exactly what he was doing. In that same way, we have to put that same kind of rigor and effort into finding people that teach us yoga. And often they're not the loud, out there people on social media. They're often the quiet people. They're often the people that, are off, and maybe they have their little space in the corner of the internet. Maybe they're not online at all, you know. But if you dig, you will find them. And you want to know what the training is, what the experience is, and where that person is coming from, because then you can have some sense that maybe there's some yoga in it. Doesn't mean, like, I love following the physios, and some of the influencers are really fun and have fun videos. Like, I like that stuff. I like having a little spice, but when it comes to actually putting my trust and my money behind somebody, I want to know that what I'm getting is the real deal. I want to know that it's authentic. So I hope this little analogy is helpful for you in thinking about studying. It's so easy to get sort of swept away in the ads and the hype, but to really pull back into yourself and be like, I need to put as much effort into finding a good yoga teacher as I do into finding a good hairstylist, or finding a good doctor, or finding a good anything, a vet, whatever it is. I hope that's helpful. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts.